Hey everyone, welcome to Ajay Discusses Movies, a show in which I discuss movies both old and new. Today we're discussing a new film that just dropped in the theaters this past week, and that movie is titled Spider-Man Brand New Day, directed by Destin Daniel Cretton. The film stars Tom Holland as he reprises his role as Peter Parker, Spider-Man. The film stars Tom Holland as Spider-Man. After wiping his memory of his best friend and girlfriend, Peter Parker must start anew as he tries to protect NYC from criminals despite his raging hormones. However, a new villain emerges as they try to use mind control to see the whereabouts of their sister. That is the plot synopsis of the film. I did watch this over the weekend, released over the weekend, and so far it's made over $1 bajillion, close to $1 billion, honestly, which just shows you the money machine that Spider-Man has and how, above all else, the stranglehold that it has from millennials all the way to Gen Z, younger Gen Z, Gen A. Kids love Spider-Man. I mean, it's evident with the amount of franchising that they do everywhere and how their name is plastered everywhere. But again, it just shows you the stranglehold of Spider-Man, that character. Nathan and I did discuss the Sam Raimi trilogy, the OG trilogy, in my opinion, the best version of Spider-Man, on our channel. So watch those videos. They were released about a year or two ago. But yeah, I mean, I've had a love for the movies. I've had my love for Spider-Man in particular. And it started with the Sam Raimi movies. And it started with the Ultimate Spider-Man comics that Brian Michael Bendis wrote, as well as the Spectacular Spider-Man show that was popular on the CW. So my love for this character goes all the way back. And even though it's gone through several transformations, and even though there definitely have been several iterations of it where I haven't been less than enthused by it, I still watch the movies and I still watch the Spider-Man property because of the love that I have for this character. So heading into our fourth Tom Holland movie, our fourth solo Spider-Man movie from Tom Holland, I did have some expectations of the movie. And general thoughts, overall thoughts on this movie, it's good. It's a good film. I wouldn't say it's great, but it is a good film, and I suggest you guys check it out in the theaters. Reason being why I think it's a good film is because I feel like this is the first time in which Peter Parker, Tom Holland, played the central focus of the movie. In previous movies, in previous Spider-Man films before this, whether it was No Way Home, Far From Home, Homecoming, every earlier Spider-Man film has to have the word home within the title, but within those movies, it felt as if Tom Holland and Peter Parker were particularly outshone by the Tony Starks, by previous iterations of Spider-Man, whether it be Andrew Garfield Spider-Man or Tobey Maguire Spider-Man. But I felt like within this film, they did a great job at just showing Peter Parker in its current form. And I think that's great. And I think the issues that Peter Parker sees himself in was a breath of fresh air. Now, granted, it did harken back to Spider-Man 2 with the Sam Raimi trilogy because the issues that Peter Parker is going through in that film are somewhat similar to what he's going through in this film. But I think they did a great job at depicting Peter Parker, his life, his issues, and it was a great character study about the man behind the mask more so than, say, just Spider-Man. And I think in the next 5-10 years, this will be the most memorable film of the 4 films that we've seen so far, of the 4 solo Spider-Man films, because it felt like its own movie.
My favorite thing about the movie is it feels like a movie. It feels like a real go to the theater film movie.
It doesn't feel as if it's just lifeless or dull. With the other Spider-Man films, it felt as if every movie blended itself with one another to the point where there was no sort of character behind any of the films. This film felt entirely different. And you can tell because, and we'll get into spoilers later, but The soundtrack made it made it very much stand on its own, but also the relationships, the dynamics, the relationships between the characters within the movie, all of that really stood on its own 2 feet. And I think it gave you a good enough time to sit with the characters, with the settings, and all of that. So, yes, it's a good film. I'll get into why it's not necessarily a great film in my negatives, but so far we'll get into my positives. So, I think first thing you have to mention with the positives are the visual and special effects. They did great. The team behind the visual and special effects crew did amazingly well in this film. Again, parts of New York City are just so full of life, so vivacious, and again, it's a testament to the visual and special effects, as well as with depicting the villain and depicting what they are able to do. I think that was just incredible. And there's a montage of the mind control that happens where Peter's just out and about in the city, and you just see this entity take form in other individuals. And I thought that was just perfectly executed. And I think that's a testament to the visual and special effects. What I really liked is that not every scene felt like it was particularly CGI. Yes, there's a good amount of CGI in this film. Obviously, it's a Spider-Man film. It wouldn't be a Spider-Man film if it wasn't CGI. But I think they did also take into effect the practical effects that should take precedence as well. So because of that, visual and special effects knocked it out of the park. The performances were also really stellar. Tom Holland did well. I feel like this is the best Spider-Man performance that he's given, best Peter Parker performance that he's given so far. Zendaya also did really well. There are moments in which I'm seeing Zendaya act and I'm thinking, wow, I was wrong about her. At first I was like, oh, it's a Disney chick who found her way into Spider-Man, and she's in other films, but she's proven me wrong over the past year or two. I think she's solidified herself as a good actor, and roles like MJ, roles like what she had in the drama really illustrate that. So both Peter and MJ did well. Jacob Batalon as Ned Leeds also did well, but I think the standouts for me were Mark Ruffalo and Sadie Sink. Sadie Sink knocked it out of the park in this film. I mean, she was just so incredibly empathetic. You could understand her backstory, but above all else, there are moments in this film where you see that she's taking this very seriously. Even though it's an MCU film, and even though sometimes actors will just coast on a paycheck because of its ties to the MCU, we don't need to name any names, but we know them fully and clearly well.
We were actually doing it when we were filming Spider-Man. That was the first time. We just brought a film crew with us down to Atlanta, and we cooked at the Optimist. And we had a dinner. Well, yeah, we were in Spider-Man together. Remember we were on Spider-Man?
We weren't in Spider-Man.
Yes, we were.
Homecoming.
You were in Spider-Man.
Sadie Sink gave an admirable performance in this movie. And there are moments where you watch her and you think, wow, without her, this film would fall flat on its face. But because of her, she is handling this well, and she's able to tie loose ends with the film. Mark Ruffalo was also an amazingly done, amazingly put together role within this movie. Just great. I mean, it's a very tragic backstory, the whole character. If you really think about it, a person that's not able to control their impulses and turns into this like Mr. Hyde situation, Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde situation, and how he can't go back to normal and he'll never go back to the way he was. I mean, it's a tragic story, and the way in which Ruffalo is able to handle that character while also educating Peter about the ramifications of the invention that he's creating, which is an inhibitor chip to prevent mutants from developing their powers or having their powers. Very, very, very gut-wrenching role that he did. So those were also the positives: the performances, visual special effects, as well as the humor. I think a lot of times when we think about the MCU, we think of how the humor undercuts the more emotionally sincere moments in the film. Yes, there is humor in the film, but it doesn't undercut those moments. And I think that's a testament to Destin Daniel Cretton, and I think it's a testament to his vision. Now, would I say the humor is as funny as, say, in Spider-Man 2 when an Asian lady sang Spider-Man, Spider-Man?
Spider-Man, Spider-Man,
Probably not. Would I say it is as funny as, say, I don't know, he humiliated me by touching me?
I'm ruined. I have nothing left except Spider-Man.
He saved your life, sir.
He humiliated me by touching me.
Probably not. But again, dealing with what we were dealing with, I thought it was good. So, yes, I would say the humor was great. You know, again, it reminds me of that Sam Raimi joke that he has in Spider-Man 2 that is said by Otto Octavius. Did anybody lose a rubber band of $100 bills? Because we found the rubber band.
Guys, before I begin, the Hollywood Chamber of Commerce has asked me to ask if anyone has lost a roll of $5 bills with a rubber band around them. Okay, well, we found the rubber band.
So the humor didn't undercut the emotional moments in the film, and I really like the dynamics that were in this film as well. The Peter MJ dynamic, there are moments in the film in which it really, really gets you, because you watch and you see this person that's trying to communicate with them and say, hey, I love you, I think you're amazing, but things happen that wiped the memory between you and I, and you're not able to recollect those memories, but those feelings are still there. And MJ saying, but I don't know you, I wish I could. I know you were a profound influence on my life, and you had a sense of direction for me, but I just don't remember you. Again, that was just such a gut-wrenching scene, and that dynamic between Peter and MJ in this film was just stellar. Peter and Punisher dynamic, very funny, hilarious. There are moments in which they're literally arguing, and it feels like an Abbott and Costello sketch. It really does feel like that. But I mean, again, it just goes to show you the dynamic between them. And I think the biggest positive that I can give to this movie is that there's no mid-credit scene, and that there's no end-credit scene. There is an end-credit scene. The end-credit scene is literally just a Spider-Man video game in which you're able to tell that Spider-Man will be in Doomsday, but there is no mid-credit scene. And I think that's something that is admirable about Marvel, is that a lot of times it feels as if these films are just made to set up something. That, hey, you got to watch the mid-credit scene. You got to watch the end-credit scene. You got to see these things happen. You got to wait for Doomsday or Secret Wars or whatever it may be the next Marvel film. I like the fact that this felt like its own standalone film where you don't need to be aware of the canon that's happening at this time that the movie is taking place in. So that's great. I think more MCU films should value that and seek that out, because it feels as if, and we've seen this so far with post-Endgame, there's just no sense of direction with these films. We saw that with Captain America Brave New World. We saw that with the Eternals. We saw that with the previous films that were released post-Endgame as well, the Marvels. There just hasn't been that much thought put into these films, and it feels as if they're just setting up for further films. But with Destin Daniel Cretton, what he's able to do so well is that he's able to tell a beginning, middle, and end and captivate you through its 2.5-hour runtime. I know that's a shock for a lot of directors. I feel like a lot of directors within the MCU can learn a thing or two from that. But I think that is the biggest positive that you can give to this film, is that it felt like an actual film that didn't need it to set up further installments of other MCU films. So those are my positives for the movie. Now let's get into spoilers. So again, spoilers, you've been spoiled, so please enter into this time where I'll wrap up my thoughts on the movie. There will be negatives that I have with the movie that will enter into spoiler territory, so please be aware of that. So let's get into spoilers. So some of the parts that I really enjoy that I feel like I sort of want to flesh more out of is the montage of Peter Parker, Spider-Man, cleaning up the streets of New York City, set to TV on the radio's Wolf Like Me. That was just incredible. I mean, you see Peter Parker, Spider-Man trying to save the day. You see him moving into a really sheltered space. We'll get into my negative, which is how is Peter able to make money a bit later on, but that was something that was in the back of my head. I would be lying if I said it wasn't. In Spider-Man 2, it's evidently clear he's able to make money through the Daily Bugle and through pizza, and even though he's struggling to make ends meet, at least you're aware as to what he's doing. With this, we don't know. But yes. So TV on the Radios, Wolf Like Me, great song, great track. Definitely check out their Letterman performance because it's really that good. So again, we mentioned the humorous moments in the movie. Spider-Man, when he enters into the elevator, he enters with women's clothes. It did remind me of that Spider-Man 2 scene in which Spider-Man enters and he just enters fully in costume because he lost his powers, and he asked about the suit and whether or not it gets up to the crotch. But I thought that was hilarious. It was a really great tip of the cap and homage to Spider-Man 2. So I like that. When Ned and Peter hang out for the first time, I mean, it's said straight from the horse's mouth. When they hang out for the first time, Peter's asked about it by MJ, and he says, "This is the first time I've been happy in quite some time." And again, you can't help but think about it and say, yeah, like this man has been literally through hell and back. This has been unideal. His friends are studying at MIT. They're getting a great education. They're live streaming about it on Instagram. They're putting it on their reels. And this man has no other choice but to look at the memories that he's wiped away from his friends while also fighting crime against Scorpion, against burglars, and things of that sort. So again, when you hear that happen, and when you see or when you hear that dialogue, I think at about an hour 52 hours in, you're like, yeah, I completely, absolutely feel for this individual. So yes, Ned and Peter hanging out was amazing. And let's get into spoilers. So I think the biggest spoiler that you can give is that Sadie Sink is in the movie. We mentioned that already, but she does play Jean Grey. And she's a part of the X-Men universe. She's a part of the X-Men and that whole sort of canon that's involved with the X-Men. And she's tasked with using mind control to target humans because of her mutant strength. And she's targeting humans so that she can gain intel as to where her sister Sarah Grey actually is. And it gets into the Department of Damage Control and their use of Sarah Grey, as well as how they were able to control mutants of that sort. And that entire part I thought was very fascinating, because a lot of times when you see these Spider-Man films, you see Spider-Man face off against a Goblin, you'll see them face against, Doc Ock, you'll see them face against these larger-than-life individuals. But very rarely do you see them fight off against someone through the use of mental fortitude. And I felt like a lot of times this was a battle between wits about, again, similar to the previous X-Men films that were created by Bryan Singer and Brett Ratner. I don't know why. I mean, obviously, you know why I smirked when I said Bryan Singer and Brett Ratner, but when you watch those films, it's about Charles Xavier facing off against Magneto, and they're two different positions as to whether or not mutants should live amongst humans or whether or not mutants should succeed and do well while standing on the back of humans. And I think in a lot of ways, this reminded me of that dynamic where you're seeing Jean Grey and you feel for her and you realize, even though what she believes in is wrong, I can understand her perspective. And in a lot of ways, I felt like she and her character, I thought, was the most fully fleshed out character that we've seen so far in this iteration of Spider-Man. So again, kudos to Sadie Sink for that. And when Spidey faces off against the Hand Clan, and when Jean Grey asks Spidey, you have to choose, are you Peter Parker or are you Spider-Man? And Spider-Man says, I'm both. And he's able to fully embrace the hormones within him, which I know it sounds very sexual, but he's able to embrace the arachnid hormones within him. You see his eyes get dilated. You see his eyes become spider-like, and he embraces the fact that he is a half mutant. That to me was amazing. And that entire action set piece, I mean, it was bone chilling, which is very rare to say when it comes to MCU films, but that scene in particular was especially bone chilling. So let's get into the negatives for now. So again, getting back into spoilers or continuing on with spoiler talk, there are negatives that I have with this movie. And the reason why I wouldn't say it's a great film, it's a good film, it's not a great film. The reason why I wouldn't say it's a great film is because there's a moment, and I think we can all understand what moment I'm trying to get at here. There's a moment where Spider-Man gets shot, and all logic gets thrown out of the window. And that's putting it lightly. Spider-Man gets shot. He gets rushed to the hospital by the police, and logic gets thrown right out the window. So again, spoiling it just to add more context to the situation. Spider-Man gets shot by Punisher because Punisher sees that Jean Grey is causing havoc and she's making everything go static. Everything is at a pause because of Jean Grey. Time is not able to continue at a very specific portion or segment within New York City. So the Punisher goes to the location in which Jean Grey is imprisoned in. And he sees Jean Grey and he decides to shoot Jean Grey. But it shoots Peter Parker instead. Now, there are a lot of questions that I have with this. So when he goes to the hospital, do the nurses and doctors know his identity? Because it seems like they do. And if they do, why don't they threaten to tell the Daily Bugle or any of those individuals that are hell-bent on knowing his identity? Why don't they just know his identity? Why don't they just use his identity and tell it to the Daily Bugle? That's a question that I had. Other question that I had is, why wasn't the Punisher arrested when he shot Spider-Man? He's just right there, right by his bed, and as soon as Peter Parker wakes up, the Punisher is there. I mean, if you're accused of shooting Spider-Man, if there's video evidence of you shooting Spider-Man, I mean, that's a wrap. That is a wrap. In terms of John Bernthal's acting, I thought it was fine. I didn't think it was that great. It felt like he was just playing the Punisher from the Netflix series, but more importantly, it just felt like very similar to the role that he had in the Odyssey, where he's like, I'm a blue collar man. I'm a blue collar man. You know, I'm gonna shoot Spider-Man. I'm gonna create havoc in New York City. I'm gonna live like I'm Otto Octavius right by the water. MJ, what are you doing?
Oh, you know what this is, huh? Let me tell you something about Odysseus. Who knows what this is? Who knows what this is? Was he a beggar? Was he a prisoner?
But again, that's the Punisher, so I'm not gonna focus too much on John Bernthal. I thought he was fine in the movie. I didn't think he was great, but whatever. Anyways, so that was an issue. Though that part was an issue. And the other part with this film is that there are several moments in this film where you thought, okay, if the film ends here, that'll be great. It'll be a great film, right? There are several moments in this film where you could have put a bow tie, a wrap on the film, and it would have made completely logical sense. But the movie kept on insisting upon itself to continue to air, to continue to go on. And there are moments in the film where I was just like, okay, we're done. We don't need to continue this. We're done. When Spider-Man saves the day and Jean Grey and Bruce Banner are sent to the hospital / testing unit for the Department for Damage Control for Jean Grey's sake, I was like, okay, if the movie ends, that's great. The movie kept on going, and I was like, okay, that's fine. We get the final Peter and MJ confrontation scene in which MJ confesses that she doesn't know him and that it's very difficult. And I was like, okay, fine, right? If the movie ends here, that's fine. I get it. And then all of a sudden, we are transported to the Department of Damage Control. And while I don't hate that scene in particular, and while I don't hate that montage, because we do get that hand clan scene or foot clan scene, hand clan scene. I'm confusing Ninja Turtles with Spider-Man with that reference, but yes, when we get the hand clan montage, that scene, that action set piece, I was like, great. But after the Peter and MJ scene, it really did feel like the movie was going to end. Now, I don't know what stopped it from ending. Maybe it was because they may have seen too many similarities between this movie and Spider-Man 2 with that ending, but yeah, I mean, it just felt like it was just continuing on. And after a while, the pacing did become an issue. So by that last half hour of the movie, I was definitely checking my phone. So the pacing at the end of it, tail end of it, was an issue for this movie. And obviously, I can get into the more nitpicky questions that I do have with the movie. I could get into, how does MJ get mind controlled when she has that first confrontation or conversation with Peter Parker? How is she able to get mind controlled? Wasn't the guy that was mind controlled stuck on a helicopter? And isn't there a limit to the amount of feet that you're able to siphon off or transition to the next person? Isn't there like, I don't know, like a certain amount of feet that you're able to get to? It just felt very illogical, but again, that's nitpicky, so I'm not even going to like fully get into that. Again, there are questions that I have with the movie. There are nitpicks that I have with the movie, but I feel like at the end of the day, those are nitpicks, and that doesn't really deter me from my overall enjoyment of the film. So, having said all that, it is a good film. I liked it. And I'm not surprised that it's made nearly $1 billion so far. I mean, Spider-Man is a huge entity. It is a huge property. And I think one of the main reasons why it's such a huge property is because he really is like the working man superhero, right? I mean, he is an individual that is struggling to make ends meet, that is trying to survive, trying to live the life that he wants to live, a person that is often described to be in their 20s, late teens, and he's going through all these issues, not just personal with his relationship with his parents, not just personal with his relationship with Aunt May, but also with just daily life situations and occurrences, and having to juxtapose that and deal with that with, say, being a Spider-Man, a masked vigilante who's, trying to save the city of New York. I feel like in a lot of ways that moral responsibility is something that we see within our lives. And even though it may not be to the extent as, say, fighting crime in New York City, I feel like there's something that we can all sort of relate to. So, I mean, I think that's the reason as to why it stood the test of time, more so than, say, I don't know, the X-Men. I mean, even though the X-Men you can relate easily to, I feel like people do Spider-Man does a better enough job to relate to you more so than, say, Superman, who is this alien-like figure, or even that of, say, Batman, who, is a billionaire, and you're just like, okay, well, if you really wanted to save Gotham, then why not just, I don't know, donate a good amount of your money and, invest in your local infrastructure and education and things of that sort, but whatever. Anyways, I'm going off the deep end here. Final thoughts on this movie. Good movie. And I'm happy that Destin Daniel Cretton was able to give Spider-Man his own standalone film in which he himself is the main role, because a lot of the times, whether it's through Civil War, whether it's through the first two Spider-Man films, even that of, say, the No Way Home film that featured Andrew Garfield and Tomei Maguire as Spider-Man, it felt as if he was playing second fiddle to those characters. And it was good to see him just be his own character, be his own main figure. So I'm very happy about that. And with that comes the end of the discussion. So yes, definitely go watch it. I will see whether or not it will be in my top 10 films of the year. This has been a particularly, I wouldn't say rough year for films, but it's been a rather unnotable year so far. I know we still have another 5 months out of the year to discuss the top 10 list of this year, but it's been a particularly unnotable year in film. I know 2025 was amazing with the Park Chan-wook's and with Yorgos Lanthimos and, the Safdies and P.T. Anderson. It's been a rather unnotable year for film, but I'm happy to see the success that not only this film is getting, but also The Odyssey and Toy Story 5. It's good to know that people are watching movies. It may be tied to a larger IP, but it's good to know that people are watching movies. I did watch this on a Sunday morning, and usually when I go to the theaters on a Sunday morning, it's relatively, it's light amount of traffic. There's really no one that's at the theater when you're watching it on a Sunday morning. When I watched it yesterday, there was an overlap between Spider-Man fans and Odyssey fans. And there was more Spider-Man fans than Odyssey fans. But to see a Sunday morning movie in which cars were parked to the gills was just incredible to see. And to see people repping their superhero of choice going to the theater, it was nice. It's cool. It's cool to be bleak or to be hip about it and say, screw that. But with the uncertainty that we face as people, with the craziness that we have to endure in life, especially living here in America, and the crazy stuff that we have to see on a day-to-day basis, it was just great to see some semblance of social cohesion. And it's crazy that Spider-Man was the film to do that, but hey, whatever. Anyways, guys, I'm going off the deep end here. Thank you so much for watching. Thanks so much for listening. I'll see you guys next week, and it'll probably be with a guest. All right,